Nelson Mandela's release from prison, a story of hope, forgiveness, and strength. On February 11, 1990, a momentous event took place in South Africa. After spending 27 years in prison, Nelson Mandela walked out of his prison gates as a free man. His release marked the beginning of a new era, not only for South Africa, but for the entire world. Mandela, who had been imprisoned for fighting against racial oppression and injustice, became a symbol of hope, forgiveness, and unity. Nelson Mandela was born in 1918 in a small village in South Africa. As he grew up, he witnessed the deep injustice of apartheid, a system of racial segregation that oppressed Black South Africans. Under apartheid, people were divided by the color of their skin, and Black South Africans were denied basic rights such as education, land ownership, and the ability to vote. Mandela couldn't stand the unfair treatment of his people, so he decided to fight back. Mandela joined the African National Congress, ANC, a group that worked to bring equal rights to all South Africans. At first, the group protested peacefully, but as the government's violence increased, Mandela and others decided that stronger action was needed. Because of this, he was arrested in 1962 for his involvement in the anti-apartheid movement. He was sentenced to life in prison. For the next 27 years, Mandela lived behind bars. He was confined to a small cell, forced to do hard labor, and allowed only a few visitors. Despite the harsh conditions, he did not lose hope. He spent his time studying, learning, and planning for a future where all South Africans could live together in peace. Mandela refused to allow hatred or anger to consume him, even though the apartheid government had taken so much from him. As Mandela sat in his prison cell, the world outside began to change. Protests against apartheid grew stronger, both in South Africa and around the world. People demanded Mandela's release, and over time, the South African government realized they could no longer ignore the calls for change. On February 11, 1990, Nelson Mandela finally walked free. Millions of people watched as he stepped out of prison, not as a broken man, but as a leader filled with strength and purpose. But what surprised the world most wasn't just his freedom, it was his message. Instead of seeking revenge, Mandela called for forgiveness and unity. He knew that South Africa could not heal if people remained divided by hatred. Mandela's ability to forgive the very people who had imprisoned him for nearly 3 decades was remarkable. He knew that holding on to anger would only lead to more violence and suffering. Instead, he chose to lead his country with love and understanding. 4 years later, in 1994, Mandela became South Africa's first Black president. Under his leadership, apartheid officially ended, and the country began its journey toward healing and reconciliation. Inspiration from Mandela's story. Nelson Mandela's story is a powerful lesson in resilience, hope, and the power of forgiveness. Despite facing unimaginable hardships, Mandela never gave up on his dream of a united, free South Africa. He teaches us that even in the darkest times, we can find strength within ourselves. We can choose to rise above bitterness and anger and work towards something greater. Mandela's ability to forgive his oppressors shows that true strength lies not in revenge, but in the power of love and unity. His story reminds us that no matter how tough our struggles may be, we too can find the courage to overcome them. Just as Mandela led a nation from division to unity, we can face our own challenges with strength, hope, and the belief that a better future is possible. Forgiveness is not an easy path, but it is the way to true freedom. Let Mandela's life inspire you to stay strong, forgive, and keep pushing forward, even in the face of adversity. Your struggles today could lead to a brighter tomorrow.